Hello Photoshoppers. So today I'm going to show you how to make a Felix Beltran-inspired image in Photoshop. So when we look at Felix Beltran's posters, he has these gorgeous little circular shapes that frame the characters' faces. And he just uses a 3-color process in all of these. These were all silk screened, but he started from a photograph, a black and white photograph. He made it super high contrast to eliminate too much detail and just get stark whites and dark blacks to be able to then paint these beautiful shapes on there to kind of smooth out all the edges. We'll look at some more here. This is another example. This one is very high contrast with very little detail, but it's enough to see what's going on in the image. Same with this one here. We have all these beautiful organic shapes that he made around the faces. These he's just using a 2-color process with that same very high contrast method. He went in and painted some extra lines and circular shapes on some of the ends of the lines, but there's no real sharp corners in any of these. And then I'll also show you how to do this effect. Ours are going to be horizontal lines, but I'll show you how to get a similar technique. All right. Okay, so I'm starting with this stock image here. I'm going to go ahead and crop in tight on this woman here. Okay, and I'm going to also do something that I don't like to do in Photoshop. I'm going to make the image larger. So we're going to see some pixelation. So I'm going to go to image size. I need this to be 6 by 9 for this project. So I'm going to change my height to 9 and see that I have enough room here to crop down to 6 inches. If I change this to 9, but this is below 6 inches, then I would go ahead instead and change my width to 6 inches and then crop down the height. So I'll hit OK, and then I'll go to image canvas size this time to crop a bit. I'm going to go to inches, and I want to crop in. I can go ahead and leave my anchor centered, and I'm going to make it 6 inches wide and hit OK. And it says it's going to cut off some of your image. That's okay. I'll hit proceed, and that looks good to me. So I also like to duplicate my background so that in case I need to refer back to the original image. So I'm going to go to Layer, Duplicate Layer, 4th option from the top, and I'll hit OK. I'm fine with that naming there. So now I need to make this a black and white image. So I'm going to choose from my adjustment layers little icon at the bottom of the layers panel, black and white. From there, I found that with this image, I like the high contrast of the infrared preset. So that's right here in the properties panel under presets. I'll change default to infrared. And then there I'm going to crank my reds way up high to get a bit of blowout in the skin there. So I'm not seeing her cheekbone as much. I'm just seeing a bit of detail around the nose and a little under the lips. I still see her eyebrows and some detail in her hair. We're not going to need any detail in her hair for this project, but that looks good to me. And so I'm going to commit to that, but I'm going to also hold down my option button and hover between the black and white adjustment layer and the background copy layer so that it's only being applied to that background copy and not to the layer below it. So now from here, let's go ahead and click on background copy and go into filter. And we're going to go to our filter gallery. Oh, before I do that, make sure that your defaults down here, your foreground and background colors, are set to the default of black and white. You can just hit D on your keyboard as a shortcut to make those, to change those colors. Now let's go back into the filter gallery. And from here, you're going to choose torn edges. Let me hit Command 0 to zoom out so you can see what that looks like. All right, so we lose a lot of our detail, but we get this torn edges effect here. And for image balance, you're going to leave that right in the middle. For smoothness, I cranked it up so I could see like just black and not any of that fuzzy grayness there. And for contrast, I'm actually going to be on the lower side. I had mine set to about 7, and I'll hit OK. So your image and your subject matter in the image, you may need to choose different settings than what I just chose there. So I'm glad that I kept my background layer. I made a duplication of it because I'm going to need to refer to this to see some of the edges of her face. But what we can do now is make a new layer here by just clicking the Add a New Layer icon. We don't want it to be between the black and white and background copy layer, so I'm going to pull it above here. And it's still only affecting those layers below, and I don't want that. So I'm going to hit the Option key again and hover between those two layers and see how my cursor changed to have a slash through the little arrow, and that's what I want to see. So I'll just click one time, and now the layer is just hovering on its own. So there's a few ways to achieve this technique. I'll show you the pen tool first. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the pen tool here. And I want to go up and change my settings, turn my fill to none, turn my stroke to a color that I can see. I'll just pick this bright magenta color for now. You can have whatever color you'd like. My stroke doesn't need to be that big. It can be maybe around a 5 or so for now. And then the stroke options, just pick that solid stroke there, the top straight line there. Okay. So now back to the pen tool. I'm going to go ahead and just click around on making sure that top blank layer is selected. And I'm going to create a nice hairline for her. And you can zoom in using Command plus while you're using the pen tool. And just making nice smooth lines. Nice curved edges here. I'll zoom in some more. Now it's okay if your stroke is a bit thick because we're not going to have a stroke on the final option. We're just going to have a fill. So as you can see by the filter that we chose, the torn edges, we do have rough edges here, and we don't want those, so we're just going to smooth right over it here. When we get to the end of this line, we're going to give our pen tool a little pull because we don't want a sharp corner, right? Same with these edges here. Now if you want, you can connect these two pieces and just have it go all the way down, or you can make them separate. I'm going to make them separate for now. Maybe I'll just connect this little one here. And we just keep going. Now, I recommend with this process that you trust the shadows that are in your image. Don't try to make too many, don't try to add on to them because sometimes it can just look really bizarre. You can get into these little creases if you'd like to. For now, I'm just going to soften them out for the sake of time for this tutorial. See, I got a sharp edge there, so I'm going to hit Command Z and go back a bit. Round this baby out. There we go. And keep going on down. I'm just going to quickly do these, and then what I would do is I like to go outside of my border here in Photoshop and then continue around. This right here is part of the background, so I'm going to actually delete that from my layer in a little bit. If you don't know what you're looking at, just turn off the visibility of the background layer, and then you can go in and trace from the actual image. So let me go back a few steps. Take it back a couple more. Okay, and you're still drawing on the shape layer at the top here. Let me go back a couple more. There we go. So just make sure you don't accidentally click on the background layer. You want to keep going on that layer above there. Don't worry about all the little flyaways. We'll delete those if they got caught in your your filtered layer there. And then I can hold down my Option key to swing this handle around and then go ahead and close the shape. Great. So I have a sharp corner there, but that's okay. And then I will now turn off my stroke and change my fill to black. Okay, great. And turn this background copy back on. Great. And now we can see it's starting to take form there. So that's one way to do it. The next way would be to, I think that's a really nice fast way to do this large mass of hair area, or a big area that's going to be primarily black in your image. The next way would be to use the paintbrush tool, or I'm sorry, the brush tool. So make sure that you're choosing this brush tool. You can just hit B on your keyboard and not the history brush tool. That's a totally different thing. That one lets you go back and change things that you make changes to things that you've already applied. So we just want to use the regular brush tool. And I'm going to make a new layer for this just in case I don't want it all to be on one layer, everything that I'm painting in. So I have black as my foreground color. I'm going to hit B for my brush. And then for this, to achieve that same technique, you're going to need to vary your brush size as you're going along. So I'm just using the bracket keys on my keyboard, and I'll start here in her eyebrow and just sort of go around the edges there. Now there's a delay when I paint with this brush. So you can see my cursor is like leading it. I'm going to bump it back a bit. See how my cursor goes before the brush stroke. So just, be wary of that. And then I'm going to reduce the size of my brush and keep going. And then you don't need to fill in the edges. You can just go along the edges and you just let that filter layer be the fill. But I want to get rid of any pixelation I see here. I just want to brush right over it. And if you need to zoom in further, you can and make your brush tiny. Great. And so I would do this all the way along. And it's a really calming process, actually. So have some fun with it. The third thing is if you would like to get some more really beautiful, these really neat round edges here, and you're just not feeling very confident about your pen tool skills, that's all right. I got a little trick for you. I'm going to use my ellipse tool here, and I would just draw little circles and then change their fill to black and their stroke to none. And then just move them to where I'd like them to be. And if it's not the right size that you want, you can hit Command T or free transform, and you can adjust its size, however you need. Then once I get it the size I like, and you can hit return to commit to that. And then to make that transition from your edge there to that circle, so it doesn't look just like little circles popped on there, I'm going to lock this layer because I'm going to use my pen tool. And when I try to use my pen tool with ellipses, whenever you click on an anchor point, the cursor is going to change to the delete anchor point tool. And if you click on it, then you won't have a circle anymore. So to lock this layer, I'm going to go to Layer and then Lock Layers. You can also hit Command / but it's going to ask me what kind. I can just hit this image. Click that there and hit OK. And now you can see that ellipse layer is locked. So from here, I'm going to click, this is going to apply it to, let's see, it's going to make a new layer when I start drawing. But I'm going to just draw a nice transition using my pen tool along the edge there. And this has a fill applied right now and no stroke, so it's looking a little bit weird, but that's okay. I'm just going to click over to directly to the other side of that ellipse, and I'm going to trace along the edge with my pen tool, dip in a bit, and then transition out to there, and then go around. I'm just making extra little anchor points to connect back to my starting anchor point so I can close the shape now. And then click away on a different layer so that the anchor points disappear, and then I can see that transition a little bit better. Let's see, I can also use my direct select tool if you want to edit some of those. I need to get back onto that shape layer. I'm not super stoked on that little corner here, so I'm going to swing it around a bit. There we go. That looks better. I could do better, but for now, you get the idea. So it looks pretty good from far away. So here could be a large circle. Here could be another little circle. And let me just bring this back up. I really like these little ones coming off here, and some kind of dip in, and then he uses them for the highlights as well. So just take your time with this. It's a really amazing effect. Yeah, take your time drawing all those circles if you want to do this technique. Now to add the color. So I would go ahead and go back down towards the bottom there. And I'm going to go into the background layer and turn off the background copy just for a second. And from here, I'm going to choose my select the object selection tool, and hover over her face and hit that, click on it so that it selects her. Good. Then from there, I'm going to make a new layer right above that background layer, and I can turn the visibility back off. And now I'm just going to pick a color that I like for her. Let me go back to the first example we looked at. So with this Angela Davis image, it's a really beautifully like red-orange color against a blue color. So I'm going to pick some kind of primary-ish color. So I'll make her red. And then I'm just going to use my paint bucket tool to fill in this selection, making sure that my new blank layer is selected. Great. And then I can hit deselect. I'm going to put it in another layer. This one's going to be my background layer. I'm going to pop it below that layer 2, and I'll fill this one with a yellow and hit OK. And then I'm just going to paint bucket that yellow layer there. Great. So now if I turn this background copy layer on, I lose those 2 layers, and that's okay. I can just go change my blending mode from normal to multiply, and then I get some of those details back. So for this particular image, I'm not crazy about this hair that's showing up here. So I'm going to turn these 3 layers off real fast so that I can select that by looking at the original image. And I'm just using my magnetic lasso because I'm going to have a stroke around the outside of her face. So it doesn't have to be super exact. You're also welcome to just draw a selection with your pen tool, like you've seen me do in other videos. But there we go. Okay, and then just make sure I click these layers back on, and I have my red layer then copied. I'm sorry, red layer selected. I'm going to hit delete to get rid of that. And if I click on the background copy layer and hit delete, that little black spot will go away as well. Okay, so I can do the same thing up here. I'm going to deselect by hitting Command Z. I notice I got some of her wispy hair up here in the mask of the quick selection. So that's on the red layer as well. It's actually, there's some of it up here too. So I'm just going to do the same thing. Oops, sorry about that. Come back. Okay, I'm just going to start clicking around and just a loose selection. You could also just do this with your regular lasso tool. And click on that red layer, hit delete to trim that. And then I'm also going to click on the background layer here and get rid of this area back here that was like the chair behind her head. Okay, cool. So that's looking really good. So that is, I can also delete this stuff down here if I wanted to. Okay, so when you're done, this is how it might look. All right. I would still go in and add more of the beautiful details, and even out here on her hair, maybe a little out there. Her hair's not curly, but you know, you get the idea. And I could definitely add more down in these areas too. So there's that how you finish that process. All right. Then if you'd like to do this, this effect with the stripes, I'll show you how to do that next. So for this, I'm going to turn off these layers. I would just start from scratch. And I will go ahead, and you still need to have your background copy turned to black and white. But instead, I'm going to make a new layer here below it. And I'm going to fill it with white for my background and hit OK. Oh, sorry, I got to paint bucket it. So I'll hit G for my paint bucket, make sure that layer is selected, and drop white in there. Then same thing as we did before, we need to select her face. So you can use your quick selection tool, or select subject and make a new layer. And with that one, I'm going to just paint it one of the colors. Let's see, I'll do pink and hit OK. So now we're going to go back into our filter gallery. And before, when we chose the black and white filter, the poster edges or the torn edges, we had black and white selected down here for our colors. So now when we choose a black and white filter in the filter gallery, since pink and white are our colors, it's going to make everything pink and white. I want to choose a nice contrasting color than pink for my background color, so I'm going to select yellow again. So now I have this pink and yellow selected. And so we're going to go, oh, before I do that, I'm sorry, I need to fill in this layer that we just made. So I'm just going to paint bucket it in. Okay. So the whole layer is, let me turn these ones up so you can see. These are my painted layers here and my ellipses. Here we go. So her whole layer is painted pink. So now I'm going to go up into the filter gallery and go to this one here, filter gallery, not the top option. That's just going to reapply the torn edges. So now for this one, we're going to choose halftone pattern. And then over here for pattern type, you're going to choose line instead of dot. Okay, usually it's like this. We're going to choose line today. You're going to crank the size all the way up to 12 and the contrast all the way up to 50. And then hit OK. And then you can go back in and turn on all these details just so you can see them all. So it's all the same process as far as laying down the black and the little circle-y detailed edges. This time you just want to make sure that you, let me pull this white background layer behind that. There you go. All right. This time you just want to change your fill layer to a color, and then change your color, foreground and background colors to contrasting colors, and then you're going to go up into your filter gallery and choose halftone pattern, line, and crank the settings all the way up. All right, thank you so much for watching.